Hello, and welcome to the Brothers and Sisters Circle, the show that brings the Black community together. We'll discuss the ins and outs of relationships, healing, health and wellness, purpose, and ways to move forward. Let's welcome our host, Mark Monplaisir.
All right. Hello, everybody. What's going on? It's Mark Monplaisir. I am the author of Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, Broken Daughters. It's your organizational psychologist. So today I have a really special guest with me. I have Dr. Joseph Mbele. I hope I said the name correctly. So we're going to talk about, the history of African descent people, African diaspora, and pretty much how that history affected us because it's been passed down from generation to generation, and how we're still using some of the same traditions and patterns and things that we were taught from slavery, and how they affecting us today, and how we can move past them by learning the history and understanding, and then learn to do better, know better, and start living healthier lives. So Dr. Mbele, please introduce yourself. Tell the audience who you are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So, I'm Tanzanian. Um, I'm a citizen of Tanzania, uh, very beautiful country on the eastern side of Africa. And I teach here at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. I'm in the English department. Um, English is my third language. Uh, um, um, so there's another story. Okay. Um, most of the Africans you see, they have their mother tongue, and maybe they have another language and another language, and English or French. So I teach literature from around the world.
Okay.
I was recruited here to teach, what they called post-colonial literatures, literature from countries that used to be British colonies. So you're talking about many parts of the world.
Right.
Okay. All the way from Fiji to the Caribbean, through African countries, through India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, everywhere. I'm a jack of all trades.
That's
I
awesome.
also, yes, I also teach folklore, the traditions, of different nations,
Yeah.
the stories, the myths, the legends, the folk tales. And my research mostly is in the African traditions. So when you talk about what we are going to do today, talk about the history, I embraced your request because I dig into the African traditions,
Yeah.
the mythologies and so on, going back thousands of years, because Africa is where human beings, evolved.
Right.
So I go that far into the past. And so I think, we are going to have a great conversation here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being here, and I'm sure the audience are gonna love what you have to say. So let's dive in. So in my book, I talk about the history of the African descent people, not so much of people in Africa per se, but after post slavery and during slavery, and the traditions that we were given pretty much from the slave masters, and the way that we used to live. So what would you say in regards to the ways that we were taught, right, as African descent people from slavery? How is that impacting us today?
Yeah, yeah. I like the way you pose the question, and I know we are going to have plenty of time, to go back and forth,
Right.
Complement something we didn't say, and my style. I don't believe we need to go in a straight line.
Right.
So the starting point is okay, that starting point. And so, because we're just beginning, let me say this. It's very important for all of us Africans and people of African descent,
Right.
to put aside what the slave master taught, to put aside what the colonialists taught, because they colonized Africa. Yes. I mean, they took Africans out of there, enslaved them in the Americas, in the Middle East,
Right.
in some Asian countries. Um, let's talk about the ones they took, to the
Right.
Americas, you know, the Caribbean, Central America, South America, Brazil, the United States. Let's focus on this side of the world.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm saying let's put aside what the colonizers said about us
Mm-hmm.
in terms of our history. Let's put aside what the slave masters taught the slaves
Mm-hmm.
in this part of the world.
Right.
And so we need to begin with the idea that Africa is the original home of humans. They all, we all came from there.
Right.
Humans evolved there. And so what that means is they they learned how to use language, how to make a living,
Right.
exploit the environment.
Yeah.
They learned how to make and use tools. Whether there were sticks and stones and whatever, that's technology.
Absolutely.
And the language and the philosophy, because they learned storytelling. Storytelling
Yeah.
evolved there.
Yeah.
And through the stories, those human beings learned how to make observations,
Mm-hmm.
how to express themselves about the environment, about life, about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories embody the philosophy. There's deep thinking in those stories.
Right.
Okay. So it's important for us to begin, first of all, to recognize that
Yes.
we come from far away and we made these huge, contributions to mankind, to the
Absolutely.
human race.
Yeah.
And this is the time before writing. And if you fast forward, you come to the ancient Egyptians,
Mm-hmm.
6,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, they're already writing. And there are books, you know, there's evidence, the stories they told,
Yeah.
the achievements you know, they made in many fields. It's all recorded in writing.
Right.
So Africans need to, first of all, start recognizing that.
Yeah.
The colonizer told different stories. The slave owners told different stories, as if history started with the slave trade,
Right.
as if, Africans who came to the USA, I mean, the Caribbean and other places,
Mm-hmm.
as if their history starts with enslavement,
Right. Right.
which was supposed to be a great benefit for them because
Mm-hmm.
they were saved from the dark continent. That's the colonizers'
Yeah.
view of
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
So we need to put this aside and, do the kind of work I'm doing to study our traditions, interpret our traditions. And so a book like this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is these are folk tales I recorded
Yeah.
in my language. In my language,
That's awesome.
these are stories that came from our ancestors. From generation to generation, they've been
Mhm.
passed on by word of mouth, and I interpret them.
I like that.
And so this is the kind of work we need to do. And
Absolutely.
yeah, this is the kind of work that we need to do. And here in Minnesota, where I am, I'm very connected with African American organizations
Mm-hmm.
in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they like it very much when I go to talk about these things, to tell African stories,
Right.
and to help them interpret them, because it's a way of them discovering their roots. We were something,
Right.
before slavery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in brief, that's how I would answer your question.
Absolutely. No, I mean that's beautifully answered. And the thing is, I was born and raised in Haiti, and the history that we were taught was that I mean it was pretty much given and written for us by people who colonized us pretty much. So we for the most part as a whole, we don't really know the history of African people. You know what I'm saying? We know what we were taught. And it wasn't until, you know, when I was in my undergrad, I took a course, which was African, I think it was called African American history experience, actually. And that literally, I mean, opened my eyes, opened my mind to learning more about the, you know, who we were, you know, pre-slavery and who we became post-slavery, and it's just, you know, two different, you know, two completely different dynamics. So you know, so I definitely agree. We have to again understand who we were, and if most of us can't do that, at least, you know, we have to understand that, you know, we're not, you know, we are, even though we're byproduct of slavery, but we are better than that. You know, we are not what we were taught. You know what I mean?
And also, when those Black people were brought to Haiti, they came um, with their stories.
Yeah.
As a folklorist, you know, I teach folklore from all over the world,
Right.
including Haitian folk tales.
Yeah.
And songs and things like that.
Nice.
So the traditions right there in your country that the African people brought, we can start there, you know, start there. And fortunately, there are some books already. They've been recorded over the decades.
Yeah.
So we start there, and then we go back and we see how they actually are the same stories that are told in Africa. Okay, so
let me ask you, you know, we do have, you know, the folklore stories in Haiti, and growing up, you know, my grandparents used to tell stories, but you know, but due to our mindset, right, we don't value the stories, right? We don't appreciate them. So how do we help people, right? How do we help each other get to a space where we can actually embrace the stories, you know, embrace who, you know, who we were, you know, who our ancestors were from Africa, and you know, pretty much the learning the history of the homeland of Africa, and so we can become part of that history.
That's a very important question. So I was trained in this field of folklore.
Yeah.
Before this, I mean, before I got to college in my country, okay, before I entered the college in my country, I also thought these stories were just, you know, simple stories for entertainment. You know, you listen to them, you laugh, you put them aside.
Yeah.
But then in college, back in my country, I took a subject called oral literature. And then in graduate school, interestingly, in the United States here, graduate school, University of Wisconsin, Madison, I specialized in this field.
Yeah.
So for more than 35 years, more than 35 years, I've been doing a lot of research in these traditions. So one of the things is you learn how to see the profound wisdom, the profound messages.
Yeah, in the folklore
That
stories
are encoded in those stories, which look very simple, you know, slight stories for entertainment.
Absolutely.
You realize they are profound reflections on the meaning of life. They are profound reflections on human relationships.
Right. There's always a moral to, you know, to the stories.
Yes, not only that, but it brings up the complexities of life.
Yeah.
And it might not be morals.
Okay.
Just to get you thinking.
Right.
There are many stories which don't have clear morals, moral lessons.
Yeah.
They just are so intriguing.
Yeah.
They make you think.
Right.
They ask a lot of questions. They reveal the complexity of life and human relations.
Right. I mean, yeah. Sorry, that's what I mean. Like the truth that's in those stories.
Exactly. So one of the products of doing the work I do is this. You begin to realize if we are talking about philosophy in Haiti or in Tanzania, we should not take the European idea that we need to go to the ancient Greeks. Plato, Socrates, they taught us philosophy, but they were they're taking us directly to ancient Greece. What I'm doing is to take us into ancestral wisdom. And so we need to change that mindset.
So how do we learn to value that?
That's the thing that I'm struggling to accomplish and to share with the people.
Yeah.
How do I pick up a story that my grandma told me?
Right.
It took me 23 years to dig into 10 stories in this book. I have only 10 folk tales, but thinking about them,
yeah,
and doing research in other traditions around the world, and using philosophy, psychology, and other disciplines, how do I use those ideas to interpret these stories? That's when I realized they are really profound. They are really profound. So back to your question, yes, there are all these folk tales in Haiti, but the next step is how do we get to value them?
Right.
That was the question you asked.
Yes. Yes.
So my mission is to educate myself, to read and interpret these stories, and then to teach. I actually teach a course here at St. Olaf College, folklore. Folklore.
Yeah.
And so that's where I engage students in discovering the answer to your question. How do we, discover the depth of thinking in these stories?
Right.
Because then we'll really appreciate them. You will appreciate your grandma.
Absolutely.
The more you dig into these stories,
yeah,
you realize she was teaching you tremendous wisdom.
Right.
So you and me and everybody else, that's the question we need to address.
Yeah.
How do we learn to value these stories?
Right. So, I think that, we have been so converted into Western, modernizations, right? Western civilization. You know what I mean? So, as a coach, as a mental health coach, as a fitness coach, as an organizational psychologist, my goal is to help people, right? To help people live healthier lives. So, so how do we, because we have this mindset that we have to be in this current day and age and embrace everything that's trending and embrace everything that's not, from our roots, right? How do we get people to get to a space and say, you know what, I am of African descent. That's my culture. Now, how do I emerge in it and start learning it and start becoming part of the culture, right? Not, not the culture that, we created post-slavery, because a lot of it is unhealthy. You know what I'm saying? So how do we go back from the beginning and actually understand it and then start practicing it? You know what I'm saying? So like that, I'm really, concerned about that, because not just the younger people, but a lot of older people stop teaching.
That is true.
You know
so
what I mean?
Here's what I think. Again, back to these traditions. You have folk tales of our ancestors. You have proverbs of our ancestors. And I'll give you a few proverbs today, to illustrate my point.
Right.
You have proverbs from our ancestors. You have songs. You have beliefs.
I love proverbs.
You have customs. From our ancestors.
Right.
And one of the things, you say you are a psychologist, you do counseling and so on, and you are worrying about the disruptions that have happened to us in terms of the psyche, in terms of how we think.
Exactly.
You look at these traditions, proverbs and folk tales and things like that, they teach us humans to be whole. They teach the individual to be whole.
Yes.
They teach individual to respect themselves, to value themselves. And they teach a communal spirit.
Right. That's important.
That we depend on each other. You get these messages in the tales that a human being is healthiest when they are well connected with fellow human beings.
Which is something we don't have.
Exactly.
Right.
There's a lot of individualism. We live in a world which is capitalistic.
Right.
It's individualistic. There is a lot of isolation. One person from everybody is for themselves.
Right.
But in these folk tales, Let me give you some example. I'm not telling the whole tale at all. I'll just give you an episode.
Right.
They talk about long, long ago, there was no rain in the land. You
Mm.
know, it was dry. There was no rain. Everything was dying. You know, the grass, was dying. The animals were in turmoil. And then it says all the animals came together
Mm-hmm.
to decide what to do. All of them,
Yeah.
except hare. You know, Americans would say the hare, or
Right.
the rabbit.
Right.
I say hare because it's actually a person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he appears like the rabbit, but he's actually a person. So I don't say the hare, I say hare.
Right.
Hare did not attend the meeting. So the animals who got together, they decided collectively to
Mm-hmm.
dig a well.
Mm.
And they dug the well and they dug the well and they dug the well. And finally they saw some mud. And finally they saw water.
Water. Mm-hmm.
And they had water. They rejoiced. They had water. But then they remembered Hare did not come. And so they wanted to make sure he doesn't get to use that water
Okay.
because he didn't come to take part in the work.
Yeah.
So they wanted to make sure he shouldn't benefit
Right.
from that water.
Mm.
So the story develops, they put guards in the well to make sure that Hare doesn't come at night to steal it. It's a
Yeah.
long story. But finally they do catch, you know, the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you are growing up in a culture like that, and you are hearing stories like this. They are telling you the value, the necessity of people
Coming
working
together.
together.
Yeah.
And then you have Proverbs, which reinforce that same message, which actually say two heads are better than one,
Right.
working together. And
Mm-hmm.
you have this idea now in Africa that Westerners are hearing about. Westerners are hearing about the idea of Ubuntu. Ubuntu means personhood. You are
Mm-hmm.
a person, but you are a person because of other people,
Right.
because you belong to a community.
Yeah.
You are not a person as an individual. You are a person because of all the people around you who formed you, who sustain you. And so there is that kind of philosophy of
Right.
that's why Africans, our ancestors, before we were spoiled by Westerners,
Mm-hmm.
if they greeted you, like my name is Joseph, okay? If you greeted Joseph, how if two people met in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
two people meet and they greet each other, how are you? You don't just say I am fine.
Yeah.
The greetings go on to talk about your family. How is your family? How
Right.
is your mother? Is everybody okay in your village?
That's right. That's the
Greetings,
village spirit.
greetings take forever in
Yeah.
Africa,
Yeah.
in the traditional African. So
Right.
all these things together, they will they make the point I was making here that it's a very holistic view of the
Right.
individual.
Right.
You are not alone. Look
Mm.
at what the Europeans did to us under colonialism, in the so-called educational system,
Right.
in the economic system we have today.
Right.
It's competition, it's everybody for oneself.
Right.
If you have money, it's your money.
Yeah.
But in the African way, there's no such thing as your money.
Right.
That money belongs to a lot of other people. They have a right to your money.
Yeah.
So if you connect all these things, the healing you are talking about can begin by rediscovering those African values, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when Africans say it takes a village to raise a child,
Right.
they are not just saying it. We grew up that way. We
Yes.
grew up that way.
Yes. Yeah.
The children in the village is not just the parents who take care of them. The parents could be gone working in the fields,
Mm-hmm.
but in the village, any adult who saw
Right.
us
Right.
was responsible for us.
That used to be the mindset in Haiti. Used to be.
That's the thing.
Right.
So
But
again, the traditions are there. All we need to do is maybe go back, study them, and find ways to get to free ourselves
Mm-hmm.
from the mess we are in. We are in a
Right,
mess.
right. So since we are talking about improving lives of African descent people, right, and changing communities and creating healthier communities. What tradition surprises you that slave masters used on our ancestors that we are using today that we need to just break away from?
Uh-huh. I would say one of the greatest damages.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Sorry.
one of the, as I said, this is capitalism.
Yeah.
The slave trade came about as an economic thing. It was capitalism, the economic needs of capitalism. First, capitalism is what brought colonialism.
Right.
They wanted the resources out of Africa. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted the resources, you know, um, and the human labor, that's also
Right.
another resource. It was also capitalism. They wanted sugar from the Caribbean, and they brought people to produce the sugar.
Mm-hmm.
It was an economic proposition. It was capitalism, and the slaves in this country, they were brought up in a capitalistic system. They were educated, let me use the word educated, indoctrinated in the same system of capitalism to value money, to value individual success,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. Capitalistic values are the values that slaves were taught. So I think that's where the problem starts,
Mm-hmm.
to re-educate people that the goal of our efforts in our daily lives doesn't have to be to make money and more money and more
Right.
money.
Right.
Because if that is your goal, you could easily become like the slave master,
Right.
abusing other people,
Yes.
exploiting other people, so you
Mhm.
can make money.
That's a good point.
Success,
Mm-hmm.
success is defined in these countries in the Western world the same way the slave owner defined success. You make tons of money. That's success.
Yeah.
But in the traditional African way, success was not measured in terms of money. It was measured in terms of how well connected you are with other people.
Right.
Oh yes, you have a good relationship with other people. They didn't have money as the criterion of success.
Yeah.
In fact, if you use those values, you can have a great house, you can have a lot of money in the bank, but if you don't have good relations with other people, in
Right.
the African traditions, you are not successful at all.
Right. Right.
You are not successful at all.
Yeah.
So to decolonize the mind, there's that phrase of decolonizing the mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Look here, I read newspapers here, I read social media, and I see. In fact, I published a book just a few days ago,
Mm-hmm.
uh, another book here.
Cool. Put it
And
in the middle. We didn't see it.
yeah,
There we go. Yep. Chicken on the bus. Cool.
Chickens in the Bus. This one is a sequel. I first
Okay.
wrote this one,
Okay.
which answers some of your questions. Africans and Americans embracing cultural differences.
Differences. Awesome.
I'm talking about African cultural values here,
Yes.
comparing them with American. But this is a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So I did write an essay. It's a collection of essays.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is just about this, how we define success.
Right.
How we define success. Um, Having a lot of money is success in this country,
Right.
but it is not in the African traditions.
Yeah.
So I point out an episode here that I read a newspaper article in this country. Some African American woman had put up an announcement, how to make your child a millionaire, how to teach our Black children to be millionaires.
Right.
I put it there in my book because this is what I'm talking about. The Africans who were brought here, they were indoctrinated in
Right.
this kind of way.
Right.
You work hard, you do whatever you can to be a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very individualistic, money-oriented definition of success. That's the problem I'm talking about.
Okay, that's a very good point, and and I'm glad you talked about that, because I was actually having a conversation with somebody, and I was talking about how we need to straighten our minds first before we focus
Yeah.
on money, right? She didn't agree with me because she felt like if you don't have money, then you have no value in
You
this
see?
society, right? So, so
Mhm.
to segue into the next question, we have, especially right now, we have this battle against African descent men and African descent women, right? Black men and Black women. It's almost like we don't have this togetherness where we can actually come together and work together to create a community. It's almost like we're fighting against each other, right? What would you say
Yeah.
brought that kind of mindset to
Yeah.
us?
Yeah.
Why
Thank you
why
very
are
much.
we like that?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. And guess what? I came from Africa. I
Mhm.
was raised there, came from Africa. It's only when I came to the USA that I realized there was this tension, this
Right.
battle. I read about it all the time.
Mhm.
Black women against Black men. As an African, I found this to be a very strange idea.
Right.
So I'm glad you're asking, because I have to confess, it's one of those things we call culture shock. You go into another culture and
Yeah.
you find very strange things. This is one of the strangest things. Because again, in the African traditions, which you see in our folk tales, in our proverbs, they preach or they talk about the mutual dependence between man and woman,
Right.
that they must be together to make a unit. In the
Absolutely.
folk tales of Africa, if they're talking about a child was born, the child grew up, is a girl, they reach a certain age, the next thing is they are looking for the parents want them to get a husband.
Mhm.
It's automatic in all the folk tales
Right.
that at a certain age, the boy must have a wife.
Right.
It's taught that way, that the two depend on each other. They
Right. That's
need
how,
each
yep. That's how you
other.
create family and communities.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So you come from that tradition and then you come here and there's the tension. It does not make sense.
Right.
It's shocking. So you're asking me as an African, and I have to confess, I'm still trying to understand this.
Right.
Now, now, you and I know this disruption was brought about through the experience of slavery and
Absolutely.
the
Mhm.
modern capitalistic system, the racism,
Yeah.
the dynamics of racism in the Americas, the legacy of slavery. These have contributed to what's going on now. And so, as an African, I'm reading about the injustices,
Mhm.
the plight of Black men in this country,
Mhm.
the criminalization, you know, the assault on Black men in
Yeah.
this country.
Yeah.
So, as an African coming here, I'm learning these things, and all I can say is I don't have the answer because it's something I'm really trying to learn.
Right.
I did not grow up. I did not grow up with those um, issues. We grew up with the issue of mutual dependence between men
Right.
and women.
Right.
It's in the tales. It's in the proverbs. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
totally, totally.
yeah. So
And sorry, go ahead,
you and
finish.
I, it's good we are raising this issue because everybody who will be listening to us, they will be able to think now that it doesn't have to be this way.
Right. Right.
The tension we see here is not a natural thing. It was
Mhm.
created by somebody, and we need to identify the
Exactly.
source so we
Exactly.
can find a solution.
Exactly.
And then to know that the Africans in Africa, we did not live that way. So what went wrong? And
Mhm.
therefore, how can we fix it?
Right. No, absolutely. And what I talked about in my book is
And I would like to hear about it, by the way. We haven't talked about it.
absolutely. Let me just show it to the audience. So we during slavery, we we weren't able to have family, a healthy family dynamics, right? We weren't able to have the family that that we had in Africa, right? So now, there's been this resentment because as an African descent man, an African man at the time, you couldn't protect the African women, right? As an African woman at the time, you couldn't support the African man, right, during slavery. And then you watch your children, being stolen to be sold and auctioned into slavery. So that those things are really, really damaging. And because we never really had this space to heal from any of those things, so we're still carrying those resentment, right, feelings, and not really sure how to get past them. So because of that, we end up having this battle between Black men and Black women, where we just don't know how to come together and work together, because it's not something that most of us really saw growing up. You know what I'm saying? So I think again, we have to understand the history. We have to understand who we were pre-slavery and who we are post-slavery, and then come together and help each other heal and grow and build communities together. You know what I'm saying?
Very good
So
point.
go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay,
I
yeah.
just said, yeah.
Awesome. So let's segue into the next question. So we have this I call it an epidemic of fatherlessness in our community, right?
It is.
How would you say fatherlessness impact our communities and our children and Black men and Black women overall, being where we are, how we are today? What would you say to that?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, at some point we will go back to just what you have tried to explain here, and what I've tried to explain. We'll go back to it to
Yeah.
clarify it a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But let me get to what you have just said here. The idea of fatherless children. Let's focus on that.
Yeah.
In Africa, because of the communal spirit I was telling you about,
Right.
it did not matter if a child didn't have a father.
Mm-hmm.
It did not matter if your father was far away working in another country or town, or if your father had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
It did not matter.
Because you had the village.
Your uncles,
Right.
distant relatives, the children, a mother could send her son, her daughter to some relative, and the relative would take care of that son, that daughter, and uncle. There were always so many men
Right.
who were responsible for that child.
Right.
It didn't have to be the biological father.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people in this hemisphere, when they're thinking about that, and they want to see how it was in Africa, they need to go back to that idea of it takes a village, and
Right.
the Africans were practicing it.
Right.
So look at me now. I'm here in the USA. I'm teaching here. I'm getting a salary here. The money I make, the children back in Africa, it could be my niece's children, my little brother's children.
Right.
They are my children. They call me father.
Mm-hmm.
They call me father.
Yeah.
When they send a text, they say, Father, we need $20 today.
Right.
Textbooks. They call me father. I'm not their biological father at all.
Mm-hmm.
So people in this hemisphere, and I'm glad you raised this issue. We need to really focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
When people here talk about fatherless child, as an African, I think about home. That's not a problem in Africa.
Right.
Your uncle has the same responsibility as your biological father.
Right.
To take care of the little child.
Yeah.
And neighbors will chip in, and friends will chip in. Again, we go back to the whole question of individualism.
Right. Right.
Capitalism and the slave-owning system has instilled the individualistic ethos so deeply that somebody feels it's my child, it's my responsibility. If I'm not there, the child suffers.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way it is in Africa.
Right. No, I think that's the issue. Yeah. I think that's the issue we have here, because we don't have a sense of community. right? We
Exactly.
don't have that togetherness. So when one parent is missing, that
Yes.
child misses
Yes.
the whole village. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? So
Exactly.
I think that's where that's where the issue comes in. Is for me, I'm a new dad to a 5-year-old, and I can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I can't imagine. Well, she just turned 6. I can't
Yeah.
imagine not being part of of her life and not being in her life because
You
because
see?
because
Yeah.
because of the importance of what she gets from me
Yeah.
being in her
Yeah.
life. You know what I mean? From
Yeah.
having this a male figure in her life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
Let's take.
so
Yeah. Go ahead.
so I totally understand what you said about
Yeah.
having the village. For me,
Yeah.
I grew up with my grandparents, and
Yeah.
I saw my grandfather as my father, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah.
became a little bit of how he
Yeah.
was, because again, like I looked at him as a role
Yeah.
model. So for a
Yeah.
lot of kids who don't have that privilege to have
Yes.
a male presence in their lives,
Yeah.
they miss out. I talk
Yeah.
about this concept in my book about being the manual, right, that
Yeah.
the kids were born with, right. As the parents, we are the manual, because they watch us, they observe who we are, so they can
Yeah.
learn to be who they were created to be.
Yeah.
So definitely having a village, if we, again, it goes back to creating
Yeah.
communities, right? It goes
Yeah.
back to creating healthy communities
Yeah.
where we feel
Yeah.
safe, still feel safe having other people around our children, because a lot of
Yeah.
people don't feel safe.
Now in Africa, it's not just your grandpa. It's
Yeah.
not in this little book. It's a very
Mhm.
tiny book. I have some two little essays on raising children.
Right.
One title of the one little article is called "It Takes a Village to Raise a Child." A tiny article.
Yeah.
Another one is called "Spare the Rod, Spoil the Child." Two little articles here.
Yeah.
Here is how it works in Africa. I'm okay. Say you are a father now. Okay,
Mhm.
congratulations.
Thank
Say
you.
you are in Africa,
Yeah.
in my village. Okay, that child. Say you travel, or you are not at home. You have gone to another little town nearby. Number one, you don't have to worry about who is going to take care of my child.
Right. Right.
Anybody, any adult who happens to be near there,
Hmm.
any adult, even a complete stranger who is passing through the village, a complete stranger from another part of the county or another part of the region,
Right.
they pass there, they are responsible for that child of yours.
Right.
If they see your child fighting another child, fighting with another child, that adult, a complete stranger,
Yeah.
has the obligation to discipline those kids.
Yeah.
Complete strangers.
Right.
They have the so it's not just your grandpa. No, 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 no. Every adult.
Right. Right.
They can take, and in African traditions, the adult can take a stick and whip that child
Hmm.
who's the troublemaker.
Hmm.
They can pick a stick and whip a child who caused trouble.
Hmm.
They don't even know that parent's child. That is how we grew up in
Right.
Africa.
Right.
But now European values, Western values, they are destroying this. They are saying, you see what I'm saying? Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Let's
When we grew up, parents believed they needed to hit us
right. So
to discipline us,
let's
and
let's
complete strangers would do that.
let's talk
So
about that.
yeah, let's do because it's so important. It is so important.
I grew up.
Yeah,
I used to get my butt whooped
exactly.
by my mom. Um, so but a lot of that also caused psychological traumas,
That
right?
is why that I have heard this, and I talk about it in my book.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you raised it.
Uh,
I talk about it in my book because um, I come with a different view. I say, okay, the theorists, I say it in my book.
Yeah.
I make fun of the theorists, the psychologists who
Okay.
say it causes trauma, it spoils the self-esteem. My question is, how come my self-esteem is so strong? And we got whipped and we got cursed. Everybody of my generation, you talk to them, our self-esteem is very solid.
Right.
Nothing is so this is for me a question. I read the
Okay.
psychologists, I
Uh,
read the psychologists, but what about our generation who are so
um,
strong, so solid?
right, right. Here's the thing. Again, when I was growing up in Haiti, it was a thing, right? We didn't make anything of it. That's just what we know,
Exactly.
right? That's just what we know. You get whipped, and that's just what it is, right? You go get the belt, whatever it is that your parents want to hit you with. But there was no communication, right? There was no understanding. You know what I mean? Like for me, that's my issue
Okay.
with rearing children. For my daughter, I don't hit my daughter because
Uh-huh.
I choose to have conversations, right? I choose to be logical. I choose to if she's doing something wrong, instead of doing it out of frustration,
Okay.
I talk to her. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? So
Okay.
I think, again, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. uh, I do
Yeah.
believe that it causes
Uh-huh. Yeah.
long-term traumas, depending on how it's done, right? Because some parents
Okay.
take out their frustrations and
Uh-huh.
anger on their
Yeah.
children. You know what
I
I mean?
think that's bad. Yeah. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, go ahead, go
Our
ahead.
parents loved us. Our
Hmm.
parents loved us.
Right.
They wanted us to do the right thing. All the neighbors, all the complete strangers, they wanted to straighten us out. So, oh yes, they were working from very good intentions.
Okay.
I can guarantee that. So maybe we should explore this a bit more. And I'm hearing you. I'm
Yeah.
hearing you. Yeah, I'm hearing you because you are raising some very delicate point here, and I do want to learn a bit more because I'm very skeptical in my book.
No,
Yeah.
listen, I think I turned out all right, but also there's some things that I needed to work on, because I felt like, my my mom was going through her own stuff, and a lot of it ended up being taken out on me, but it didn't mean that she didn't love me, right? And I think that's one thing we have to understand. It's almost like being in an abusive relationship, right? It all depends on what your interpretation of love is and how you
Okay, good,
express it. You know what I'm saying?
good,
And
good.
sometimes, again, you can say, what, this is what I was taught, this is what I know,
Mm,
so I'm doing the
yeah,
same thing, right? I'm
yeah,
raising you the
yeah,
same way. But
yeah,
also there's this aspect of, I'm frustrating right now, right?
yeah,
I'm angry, you're
yeah.
making me angry, I
Yeah.
have to punish you.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And
Yes.
I think, when it comes from that, it's unhealthy, because you
Yeah.
pretty much projecting your frustration on that child on
Yes.
a physical
Yes.
level, and it
Yes.
will affect the kid on a psychological level. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's not just the whipping, it's the fact
Yeah.
that, what, I'm receiving your anger right now. I'm receiving the fact that you're frustrating with me, instead of
Yeah.
having a conversation to help me understand and teach
Yeah.
me something, right? But instead,
Yes.
you choose to, you know, get
Yeah.
physical, which doesn't really help me. You know what I mean?
That's a very, very good point. I think it's taking us a step further. And let me say something here.
Hmm.
The society here in the Western world
Yeah.
is already broken.
Right.
There is alienation.
Hmm.
There is a lot of stress.
Right.
There's a lot of stress.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This person has no relationship with the neighbors, there's no relationship with anybody else, there's no social networks.
Right.
In Africa, as I said earlier, it's communal,
Mhm.
there is Ubuntu. When people meet you, they actually talk to know
Right.
how your family is doing.
Right.
So there's a lot of there's a holistic kind of lifestyle where you feel connected with other people.
Yeah.
And so people don't have the frustrations
Hmm.
that they would then take out on the children.
Right.
The parents are well adjusted. The adults are well adjusted because
Mm.
they are in good relationship with the neighbors. They are not doing stressful jobs. They are not. They are not. They are not driven crazy for by the chasing after money. Because this drives people crazy here. You need to work hard and get this and get a new car, get a new TV, get a new house. It's a deadly, it's very inhuman,
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
So the people are frustrated. The people are very easily, upset. But when you are dealing with our people back in Africa,
Hmm.
the adults themselves are not that way. So when they take that stick to whip the child, it's very clearly not taking out frustrations on a child,
Okay.
not at all. So, and guess what? The children, we grew up knowing if we did something stupid, we would be whipped.
Right.
And the child that was whipped, we laughed at them.
Right.
And then the following day, they would laugh at another child. The following day, they would laugh at you. It was, no, it was not adults taking out their anger on
Mm.
kids,
Hmm.
because the adults were well adjusted in
Right.
their relationships with the village, with everybody else.
Yeah.
So we go back to this point, and I'll stop here. That here in the Western world, the white culture, the capitalist culture has destroyed so many things,
Hmm.
and they are the ones. The white culture. Sorry, the capitalistic culture is responsible for ruining the peace of mind, the mental frame of the adults, and creating all these frustrations we are talking about.
Right.
And
Well,
so your point about hitting the kids because you are frustrated, we need to locate it within the system itself, the
okay.
capitalist system that
Yeah.
has ruined social relations, that has created all this alienation.
Yeah. I think also that, there's something to be said about, the fact that, hurt people, right? And that also goes for parents. If you're a parent and you are hurting, right? If let's say, you were hurt, or you had your children in a, out of a bad situation, right? You became a
Mhm.
parent, or if you're a parent, you are dealing with abusive relationships. You know what I'm saying? Oftentimes when you are hurting, you tend to take out the hurt on, the person closest to you, or the person that, who seems a little bit more vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I think, my reservation when it comes to child rearing is the fact that oftentimes when it's done, out of frustration. It's done out of, hurt, and it's done out of not really understanding or knowing how to communicate with the children. In fact, I was actually having a conversation with a client, and she has a 4-year-old son, and she just didn't know how to connect with the kid, and because of that, she'll get frustrated, she'll get angry, and then take out that frustration on the kid because the kid wasn't listening. You know what I'm saying? But it's a
Yeah.
matter of understanding and learning. Okay, well, you know what I'm feeling right now, it's not necessarily because of you. It's the fact that this is how I know to respond to what I'm getting from you. You know what I'm saying? Because the
Yeah.
response could have been different, right? It could have been,
Yes.
you know what, I'm gonna use this as a teaching moment. I'm gonna use this as a moment to connect with the kid, because oftentimes when children act up, it's because something is missing. Right, it's because they're looking for attention. It's because they're looking for a connection. They're looking for, something from, to get something out of, their behavior. Right, so they act, certain ways just to get that response, but oftentimes we don't really know how to respond to it as parent, especially if you're not in a, in a good spirit. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
So now, again, I go back to the social structure,
Mm-hmm.
the social system,
Yeah.
because that's why I value our ancestors.
Right.
I value ancestral wisdom so much. Sorry. when you're growing up in Africa, traditionally, as a young man, you get training, you get teaching in matters of parenting,
Right.
you know, and being a good husband and raising, living with your wife or your husband. There's a period of training, and while you are married, the whole village is watching and making sure
Right.
you are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So when that child has the option to go away, or if one of the parents feels the child is not getting the best treatment,
Mm-hmm.
they ask some uncle, in another village to take care of the child.
Mm-hmm.
There were avenues for the child to be taken up by somebody else.
Yeah.
And the village was there. The elders, the older people, they're the ones who controlled the whole village.
Right.
They monitor the lives of all the families. If the elders knew that you were abusing your wife, you know, they would be on your case.
Right.
So social sanctions were there, built into the social structure.
Yeah.
Everybody watching over everybody else. Your personal affairs were not really your personal affairs.
Right.
So again, we really have to just keep going back to, in my view, the difference in the social systems themselves. Here, it's very isolated.
Right.
You are sitting at home, say with your wife, the neighbors have no idea what's going on.
Right.
It's none of their business.
Yeah.
And that is where the problem is. It's a very isolating, individualistic kind of culture, this
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
Yes, it's you and your child. It's you and your child.
Right. Right.
And I spoke to African parents,
Mm-hmm.
immigrant parents in another town, and I write about it in my book. I was invited by the social services in another town to talk with African immigrants
Mm-hmm.
about child raising in America.
Right.
I was telling them some of these things, those parents. They
Mm-hmm.
were mostly women from Somalia.
Right.
I was telling them, in this culture, if you see a child out there doing something, you are not allowed to go,
Right.
and catch that child and whip that child or
Yeah.
curse that child. Those women couldn't believe it.
Right.
Because in Africa, as an adult, you get out of your house, go to the playground, and to punish those kids. So for these African immigrants to be told that you don't do it here, and that you take care of your own child, you supervise your child in this
Right.
country, these women were puzzled, because in Africa, children play by themselves
Right.
anywhere in the town.
Yeah.
They run 2 blocks away. The parents don't know where the kids are. The kids will come back later when they are hungry.
Right. It's a different
But
culture.
here, as a parent, if you let children run around like that, the social services will catch you because the kids are running without supervision.
Kids endangerment. Yes.
It's a very different world.
It is. It is.
Those Somali women couldn't believe that they are now in this kind of country.
Right. No, absolutely. I think, I was actually reading this book. I think it's called The Human Zoo. And the author talked about, the super tribal dynamic that we weren't
Uh,
created to be in, right?
uh,
Because we
uh,
were supposed to be in close tribes and knowing your
uh,
neighbors and knowing your
uh,
community. So but
yeah,
we don't have that because of the super tribe aspect of humanity, right? Um,
yeah,
so so my thing is, we are again trying to build healthier communities and bring
yeah, yeah,
black people together, right? Whether
yeah,
you're a man or a woman,
yeah,
we want everybody to come together and work
exactly.
together and create healthier family dynamic, healthier communities.
Yes,
So
yes,
we are getting to the end of this show.
yeah,
What would you say,
yeah,
would be one thing
yeah,
that we can do
yeah,
collectively
yeah,
to
yeah,
start heading towards a good path
Yeah.
to coming
I
together.
think I think conversations like this are very important.
Hmm.
Say for somebody who, say for a black family in Michigan or Atlanta or somewhere, who has lived in this country and all they know is the way things work here,
Right.
to have this kind of conversation so that they can, black people in the Americas, you know, can begin to see themselves differently, that
Yeah.
we come from a tradition which was
Right.
actually different.
Hmm.
We come from a tradition which was better than this.
Right.
Because if you are not even aware that there are other possibilities, then you are really trapped.
Yeah.
You are really trapped. But if you know things don't have to be this way, and so having this dialogue, this conversation, this education,
Right.
you know, I learn your viewpoint, you learn my viewpoint,
Mhm.
and you know, even on the day when you are frustrated, you can say, okay, I'm frustrated because I live in a wrong kind of socioeconomic system.
Right. Right.
Uh, and it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. So, but then the next question is, can we can we can we can we bring back those African values here in the black populations in the
Hmm.
Americas? Is it possible to bring that communal spirit, um, the child raising the village?
Right.
Let me tell you, there was a news report once of a black American who had whipped his son
Hmm.
in this country.
Yeah.
Oh, it was an uproar. It was an uproar in this country.
Yeah.
And as an African, I was saying, this man, why is he being put into such trouble?
Right.
You know, because from an African point of view,
It's normal.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, anyway, so I'm just suggesting that conversations like this are part of the solution.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We lack we lack the opportunities for Africans and black people in the Americas
Hmm.
to just get together in a respectful way to talk about our situations.
Yes.
There is
Yes.
a lot of tension between black people of the African continent
Hmm.
and black people of the Americas.
Right.
There's tension, misunderstandings, and tremendous ignorance.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
Africans being very ignorant of the people here, the
Hmm.
black people here, and the black people here being very ignorant of the African people.
Right. Yeah. No, I
And
think, yeah, I think that's what that's, that's part of where the issue is, because we don't see ourselves as a
yeah,
collective group, right?
no,
We
no,
look at each other as, you're African, this person is
yes,
American, this other person
yes,
is
yes,
Haitian, is Jamaican.
yes,
And we have this system where
yeah,
it's almost like we try to balance and each other
yeah,
out and say, well,
yeah,
I'm better than you, right? Because
yeah,
of my ethnic
yeah,
background. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And that
yeah,
doesn't help us,
yes.
come
It doesn't,
together, because
it doesn't,
we don't see
yeah,
ourselves as
it doesn't,
the same, the same group of
yeah,
people. But in
yeah,
reality, we are seen as the same group of people. It doesn't
yeah,
matter where you're
yeah,
from. You are
yeah,
seen as an African descent or a black man,
yeah,
right? It doesn't
yeah,
matter. No one will look
yeah,
at me and say, well, he's Haitian, right? Or
yeah, yeah,
African.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think we have to again
yeah,
change the mindset, change our
yeah,
mindset that we
yeah,
are in this
yeah,
together, and we have to
yeah,
come together to
yeah,
fix the issues, and we have
yeah,
to work together to build
yeah,
and create healthy communities, healthy family dynamics. And again, like you
yeah,
said, having conversations like this will
yeah,
definitely help to
yeah,
teach, especially
yeah,
the younger generations who
yeah,
can who choose not to identify as
yeah,
Africans. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Because
Oh yeah,
they're not proud of that, of the roots of
yeah.
being African. And
And
I
part
think
of the reason is miseducation. Miseducation.
that's all it is. That's all it is.
They need to hear an African like me who
Right.
is so proud of being African,
Yes.
who is so proud of teaching the world about the greatness of African thought
Right.
and value system.
Yes.
Those kids who don't want to identify as Africans,
Hmm.
they need to sit together with somebody like me,
Right. Yeah.
an African who is family, family. rooted
Yes,
in their African identity and makes no apologies.
absolutely.
Yeah. You know
Absolutely.
what we have not done? We didn't get to talking about your book because I wanted to hear a lot about it. We need to have another session someday.
Absolutely. We will. We
We
will.
can focus on that because I'm curious about your ideas. And you started me thinking when you talked about damaging the child,
Right.
and I was listening, but we got
Mhm.
distracted. We went into all directions.
We have a lot to talk about, but so little time.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So maybe we should set up another time.
Sure, absolutely. We'll have an episode two,
Yeah,
part two, where we
yeah,
talk more about
yeah,
the things that I talk about in my book, and you can talk about your
exactly,
work. But I
exactly.
appreciate you for being here. So please tell everybody where they can find your work, your books.
Yeah,
Just find you.
yeah. Oh, okay. My books are easily available online. You know, this one, it was mentioned on the American TV program
Cool.
Jeopardy.
Okay,
There
nice,
is,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, 2017. This one also, Africans and Americans, is
Hmm.
the most popular one. This is the most popular one. Everybody who goes to Africa, Americans, they love reading this
Yeah.
because they talk about the cultural differences.
Right.
And Africans who are here, they love it too. This is a sequel, you read this and then this one is a sequel. So they're available online, but it's also from a website where I published it. It's www.lulu.com. Lulu is Lulu.
We're gonna have a link, for everybody
Yeah,
to find you
yeah,
in the
yeah,
description
yeah,
of the show.
yeah. I'm
So
on Facebook, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm everywhere. Yeah,
awesome, Dr. Mbele. I love saying
yeah.
last names. I love saying last
Oh, yeah, you
names.
did it right. You did it right. You did it right.
I appreciate you. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Again, my name is Mark Moplaisir. I am the author of Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, Broken Daughters, Healing Generational Pain. Again, I am so thankful for having you here to have this conversation because it is needed.
Yeah,
We have this,
it is
our
needed.
communities who are,
Mm.
going in turmoil, really, because we don't
Very
have
much.
structures, we don't have family dynamics, we don't have men and
Yeah,
women who can come together to raise healthier children, to come together and create, prospering communities for future generations. And
yes,
I am, pleading that all of us again come together and get this work done and come together and create and build and it's not just financial stability. We need the emotional, mental, psychological
yes.
stability, which we have to work on, because if we don't have that, it's hard to create and build healthier communities and family dynamic. Dr. Mbele, thank you again for being
Thank
here,
you.
and we'll
Yeah,
see you next time on the Brothers and Sisters Circle.
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Brothers and Sisters Circle podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode.